Hello everyone, my name is Rhonda Jefferson, and welcome to Mystifyingly Missing, a podcast or YouTube episode that explores both solved and unsolved missing persons cases, and maybe even occasionally an object. Every missing persons case is just as important as any other, but I think we've all noticed that some cases get a little or a lot more attention than others. And while the person that's missing in even the high-profile cases deserve to have coverage, so do those who aren't what would be considered the media darlings. These are people that families have to fight for. They're constantly trying to keep their loved ones' names in the media. They struggle every day just to let other people know that their loved one is missing and they need help. About 4 or 5 months ago, I was watching a documentary on a young girl that had gone missing while her family was on vacation. So there was the international spin to that, but there was a huge amount of coverage on this case. But the documentary did mention that some young boys had also gone missing from that same area, but there was hardly any media coverage at all. The young girl, being a tourist and there with her family, I'm not going to name any names, but all I could think of was that the mother and father of the boys who were missing had to feel heartache on top of heartache, wondering why their children weren't getting the same attention as another person's child. Each one deserved coverage, and the boys hardly got any. Media does not play a role in every case, but when they do, I want to try to explore that. Of course, many cases that I'll be looking at don't have that media coverage, so it may not even be a topic of conversation. So that's why I want to showcase some of these missing persons cases. And before I do get into the cases that we're covering today, I just want to let everyone know that I am in no means a legal expert associated with law enforcement or have any particular training. I'm just someone who wants to make sure that as many people as possible get coverage when they've gone missing so that they can come home to their families, be there, and come back to their loved ones. And with all of that being said, let's get into it. So sometimes when we start working on something, we have this goal in mind, but even without knowing, that goal can actually change. Now, circumstances take us in a different direction, and that's what I found out over this past weekend. This weekend, I wanted to put out one of the traditional spooky tales that are told at Halloween, or maybe look at urban legends that have been embellished. This is the month that people like to get scared. But when we're scared by one of those old urban legends that have been retold thousands and thousands of times, with, of course, changes being made to reflect the time period we're in, those are just stories. Now, some may hold some type of basis in reality, but even if they do, it's not really out there or overt, and we have to dig to find it. More often, though, things come along in our lives that scare us, and we had no idea that they were going to happen. And usually, if we're scared by something, it implies in a lot of cases that we weren't prepared for it. Sometimes we can be over-prepared too, and that can scare us. But today, I'm going to be talking about true fear. And that fear is built out of love and not knowing. It's not knowing what happened to our loved one and just grasping at every last straw to try to find out what happened. So while I started earlier this month trying to find some Halloween true crime and things like that, I actually found some current cases that I feel really need to be told. And with the more people who know, the better. I'll be reviewing a few cases today, and while a couple may be older and don't really have that much information, some are more recent, and we just want to bring them home to their families, to their loved ones. So, unfortunately, some of them have very little information, but I will do my best to cover those. So, let's get into the first case. Now, the first case I really came about, and what touched me was his wife was doing everything possible that she could to make sure people knew that her husband was missing. And it's been more than 3 weeks since family members saw a Lewis, Delaware man named Woody Dickerson. He was last seen on October 7th, and so we're approaching really 4 weeks. And his wife, Trish, says that it was just a normal morning like any other day when they got up. According to an interview with Woody's wife, Trish gave this interview to a local television station, WMDT. She said that she has to leave for work early every day, sometimes even around 4:30. They said their goodbyes and I love you. And she didn't know that would be the last time she would see him for possibly weeks. Now, when she got home that afternoon, she noticed his truck was missing. That was a maroon F-150, and that was unusual. Now, even more unusual and concerning were things that were left in the house. She reported that she found a note that indicated that he may harm himself or take his own life. The letter said that he was depressed and that he was giving his final goodbye. Now, if I had found that, I can't imagine the absolute panic and fear to see a note like that. It's got to be an indescribable feeling. And I'm not going to say I know what she's going through, because this has never happened to me, and hopefully it won't happen to most people out there. But we have to acknowledge the turbulent and emotional time that this family must be going through. They're searching for answers, and they want to bring Woody home to them. Now, Trish did find his maroon F-150 at his mother's house. She was driving along that road and saw it. It was noted that the license plate had actually been removed, but his mother didn't know that the truck was there. Now, a gold alert has been issued, and that's when there's an endangered missing adult. A lot of times we actually see it if there's a medical condition or another concern that we may have. And, whenever anyone goes missing, there's an urgency in, especially the first few hours. But Trish said she doesn't feel like this is a gold alert that we would normally see. And, with some of the other instances, again, it is urgent, but we don't know of a clear and immediate threat to that person. In this case, there is that note that indicates there is an imminent threat to his health and his well-being. And so also looking at the time frame, Trish, had left for work at her normal time, and she didn't get home until that afternoon. So he could have gone missing any time in between there. He could have been missing 1 hour by the time she got home, or he could have been missing for hours and hours. So there have been some reports of seeing him, but the clothing was not something that Trish recognized, so we're not really sure if those were actual sightings of Woody or someone, who looked like him. Now, his mother did live near a forested area, and, so near where his truck was left, so it's imperative that those areas be searched for information or clues. It may be difficult to find because at this time of year, leaves are falling. It's been rainy, but to this point, as of an interview that she did on 10/27, and the last time that I had communication with her, because we have had a little bit of communication, they have not actually searched that area. Law enforcement hasn't. Now, this area being near his mother's house as well, you've got to think he's pretty familiar with it. So, there's some place he wanted to be alone, he could find it in that area. Now, even though law enforcement had not until, at least until the last time that Trish and I messaged, even though they hadn't searched the area, according to her, she had actually gone out with some friends and loved ones and did search the area. And as of now, there's still no further information about where he may be. Now, she did indicate that he has anxiety and depression, and like many people, he found himself unable to afford the proper health care and access to medication. he fell into, I guess we would call it a blind spot or a hole where he doesn't have insurance himself and he doesn't qualify for medical assistance or help through the insurance marketplace, according to what Trish had found out. So he wasn't able to quite get the help that he needed. So there may have been times where he was self-medicating, and that can sometimes make things worse, not better. Now, she is doing everything that she can to keep Woody's name in the media, and I will be including a picture and information on who to contact right up here in the corner. So he is described as being approximately 5'9" tall, 200 pounds. He is bald with brown eyes, and he has a short beard. I would call it more of like, it's not a full, like, long beard, but it's more than stubble, of course. So we'll see that in the picture. Now, just to address this right up front, if you do search for his name, you will probably see information about a DUI. And just as I stated, he didn't have the health insurance that he needed to, try to get the help that he needed. Now, mental health, it's still taboo in some places to discuss this, but thankfully the stigma is starting to go away. Mental health is part of our overall health, so if that's suffering, everything else is suffering. We're all interconnected within our health, whether it's physical, mental, or emotional. And the moment one of them starts to suffer, it just kind of trickles down to every other aspect of our life. So we can see it sometimes if a person is physically ill, then, their attitude, their emotions, and their mental health may start to suffer because of that. It's sometimes not having the support. And even if you have someone who is, cares about you and is helping you through that, you need someone who can try to understand you, or someone who's been there before. And he didn't have access to even speak with a counselor. And so, a lot of times we can see that in people who are also using substances, whether it's alcohol or any type of drug. They're using it to kind of help with their anxiety or their depression, but what usually happens is there's this cycle. Then their anxiety and depression actually get worse because of the substances, which means they take more. And it's just this never-ending cycle that is very toxic to the individual and to their families as well. And we hate to see it get to a point where something like this could happen. So I will also leave information regarding the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. They actually even have a chat function as well. So, if you're around people and you don't even really want to speak that loudly, or you just feel better typing it out, they have that option too. So that's fantastic. So I'll leave that in the description, along as putting a picture up here. And, we need to try to get this family some answers as to where Woody may be. So just keep a lookout for him. She does have a Facebook page named Please Bring Woody Home. Same thing, I will go ahead and attach that in the description along with any sources that I've used, so that if you want to go there and, look at some pictures and other things, you'll be able to. Now, there is also a case now out of Tulsa County, Oklahoma, and this involves a lot of different things here. A man and his friend went missing while traveling to a horse show, and kind of the twist here is his mother later went missing. So on October 22nd, two friends were supposed to spend a day with each other. Dwayne Selby, 59, and Jack Grimes, 76, were headed to a Friday horse show in Fort Worth, Texas. They did not show up, and they should have been home by that following Monday, so that would have made it the 25th. They did not contact anyone to let them know they had arrived at the show, and people who were expecting them noticed they weren't there, and they did not call anybody when they returned. So that did cause some concern. And the last time they did or were seen were on that Friday. Now, Jack Grimes also has diabetes, and he had left without his insulin or any additional insulin. So, as with any missing persons case, there is an urgency. Their car was found parked in Mohawk Park, and that the vehicle had been ticketed a number of times for being there for so long, and someone did notice that. Now, the case, as I said, took an unexpected turn when Selby's mother went missing. So, of course, any parent would be just, out of their mind trying to find their child, even when they're older. So, Glenda Parton was 80, but she went looking for her son, and she's now also missing. She went missing in Pryor Creek County, and they issued a silver alert for her, but everything's related to the Tulsa County cases, and they will be handling it. Her 2016 Kia Rio has been located. Now, searches had been made through the park using search dogs. No clues had been found, and investigators were trying to put together a timeline, and they can start with a sighting of the two men around 6:30. They were eating at a cafe in the town of Purcell. Now, like I said, the men's car had been ticketed a number of times at the park, and that can be used in correlation to the sighting to try to narrow down the timeline and work backwards from there. Police do want to speak with anybody who may have been in Mohawk Park on Friday in the event that they were a witness, or even Saturday if they saw something, out of the ordinary. There was a person of interest who had been seen speaking with Glenda on a video, but he has been spoken to and no arrests were made. So basically right now they're missing. Okay, so I actually just went to look up some information, and I found out some news regarding this case. Jack Grimes has been found by hikers who were hiking on Sunday, October 31st, but his remains were found and have been positively identified as of yesterday evening. This is now on Wednesday, November 3rd. Now, people in that area, the law enforcement, have never seen a case like this, and I think we can all agree that it's very, very unusual, very bizarre. I will share any of the links that I find on my Facebook page, Mystifyingly Missing. But at this point, there's not a lot of more information regarding this. It's, a pretty big story in Tulsa, of course. If you do see Miss Parton or her son, Dwayne Selby, please contact 911. Again, I'll have pictures up here of the two that are still missing, and I will include a picture of Mr. Grimes as well, just in case you may have seen him, along with the other two. Going back a little bit into the missing persons files, I was looking for some Delaware or Delmarva residents, and there was someone that I found named Irfan Mall, that's Irfan, and he went missing back in August of 2019. He was from the town of Selbyville, but was last seen in Millsboro, which is pretty close to each other in terms of location. So, it wasn't too far from home, but there really wasn't anything that I found, regarding the case. Now, I did try to find searches to see if he had been found, but the gold alert was still open. I did find at least 3 Facebook pages that he had opened, or 3 Facebook profiles. They all had the same man pictured, so it was him. There were others that had the same name, but didn't have a picture, so I couldn't quite verify if it was him or not. All of the profiles had been, started at different times, so there really wasn't a lot of activity on each one either, maybe just a few pictures, and that was pretty much it. So I will leave a picture, again up here, links to some information, as limited as it may be, in the description of the episode, and hopefully someone may see him or try to help, or may be able to bring some answers back to his family, as it's been a couple of years. The last case that I'll be covering is for James Vincent Colicchio, who lived in Queen Anne's County, Maryland, the town of Queenstown. Now, he lived in a commercial rental unit, and he was reported missing in November of 2013. The problem is that's just when he was reported missing, not necessarily when he went missing. After police spoke with neighbors as well as family members, they found that there had been no contact with him since either late August or early September of 2013. James did not have any children, nor was he dating anyone at the time. So as far as, people he may have seen on a daily basis, he didn't really have anybody there. Unfortunately, then there's that gap between when he went missing, or they believe he went missing, and when it was reported. Now, it was also reported that he had a conflict with another tenant in that rental unit. There weren't many specifics disclosed, but Mr. Colicchio did actually have a warrant out for malicious destruction of property. However, police were there observing the area around the rental unit, and they could see his two vehicles that he owned. Now, one had a window busted out, and the other appeared to have been being worked on. There were tools that had been left out around the second vehicle. Now, I do find this strange because, as a resident, you see someone's tools out around their car for a day, 2, maybe 3, and okay. But after a couple of months, I would have thought someone would have become concerned long before then. There was also no mention of whether or not, say, mail had been building up or anything like that. But for basically 2 months, this man had just dropped off the face of the earth, seemingly, and no one noticed. So, almost 3 months into this, people started looking. There had been no activity on his checking account. No phone records indicated that there had been activity after late August, early September. They also looked at perishable foods in the house, and it correlated with that same time frame of late August or early September. Now, while some news media, they'll do an episode or a report on an anniversary of the case, but just living in this area, there really wasn't a lot of information that I can remember ever being covered. Now, just the police, any law enforcement, they were already kind of behind the 8 ball as far as trying to find information. We all hear, if we listen to true crime, the first 24 to 48 hours are always the most important, even though in a missing person case, it's really even the first couple of hours. Also to note, he did have a number of cats in his unit, and somehow these, very, I guess I would say very hardy, very smart felines found a way to survive, but they were not doing well. But thankfully they were all alive. But Mr. Colicchio's family said there's no way that he would have ever left the cats there. Police have searched with cadaver dogs and aerial support, and I think, they just had to go straight to cadaver dogs based on the amount of time that had lapsed between going missing and the report. There was also no mention on whether or not they consider the other tenant to be a person of interest or a suspect, so the one that, he was kind of having that conflict with. So again, not a lot of information on this case out here. So I'll leave the contact information for you, first up here with a picture, and then, of course, in the description of the episode. When he went missing, he was 58 years old, but now he would be 66. He is a white male, approximately 6 foot tall, 6'1", 210 pounds, with red hair that was graying at that time, but with that passage of time, may be completely gray by now, and he has green eyes. I know sometimes with the passing of time, some people do have their priorities change, or maybe they don't have the same relationships anymore that they did have before, and they may be more willing to talk. So if this is you, or if you know someone who may know something about this case, please come forward, or please encourage them to come forward so that, a family can try to have answers as to what happened to Mr. Colicchio. So thank you everybody for sticking around and listening today. I do have two separate YouTube channels, and actually they started out in podcast form, Mystifyingly Missing and Danger on Delmarva. So whereas one really looks at the Delmarva Peninsula and covers any types of event that may have happened on Delmarva, Mystifyingly Missing is more about missing persons. Like I said, even sometimes missing objects if they hold some type of relevance to, how a culture, an area was shaped. Those can be important historical artifacts that have gone missing. And just exploring too the role of media. Do they help or hinder an investigation? Does it depend on the exact circumstances on whether or not they hinder or help? Just a whole lot of aspects with media and how missing persons are covered. Just looking at the number of people who we can go through the list of missing persons and have never even seen their name, while others are on a much larger scale. So, we want to cover as many cases as we can, I think. If it was my loved one missing, I would want someone trying to find them to fight for them. So, I'm going to try to post as much as I can. Sometimes the episodes may be a little bit longer if there's, a lot more information. The problem is with a lot of missing persons cases, those that aren't solved don't always have the most information. They're the ones with the more limited information, so we really have to dig to try to find out what happened. Those cases that, do have a lot of layers may go on longer, so that's a, longer detailed episode, whereas some may be a little bit shorter. But, again, I just want to thank everybody for sticking around. If you do think this content is important or is something that you would, like to listen to more, please hit the subscribe button, leave a comment, like the video. What that does is it somehow changes the algorithm for YouTube. Not really sure how that works, but basically when there's any type of interaction, it helps make the channel more visible so that more people can see the episodes if they're searching for certain keywords. So I would really appreciate it if you could, subscribe, like, comment, any of those. I'll also leave in the description, as well as my sources, links to my Facebook pages and the other podcast and YouTube channels in case you wanted to check those out. Again, if you have any information regarding any of the cases covered, please reach out to your local authorities, and I will also leave specific information in the description. Thank you all. Have a safe and healthy rest of the week. Bye.